a very soft voice, I was told, my whole life, so we need to turn that up. Is that good? Okay, so I'm on the newly, I'm joined the Spring City Citizens Corps about a month ago, and they asked me to be responsible for CERT for Spring City. And also, so we'll be putting on a CERT training here sometime the next couple of months. When I get a list, so far I've got about 12, 13 people that signed up. And we'll go through the whole thing with online training first, and then we'll do like 3 half-day Saturdays for instructor-led kind of classroom training, and that includes the mock disaster. So today, as we go through this, we'll talk a little bit about how CERT is involved with communications, and we'll discover, if you haven't done that before, of how useful radios come in a disaster. So first of all, how many of you ever done taking a can of corn or whatever and put a string between the two cans? Have you ever tried that?
Yeah.
Only a few of you? It works, doesn't it? So when I was about 5 years old, I tried that, and that's what got me interested in communications and radios. I want to know how in the world can my voice travel through the air through a walkie-talkie, and so that got me involved in electronics. I got my ham radios license when I was 14. I started out with Morse code, and I was transmitting like 15 words a minute, or transmitting like 25 words a minute. Received it about 15 words a minute, but that was a long time ago. That's not required anymore to do ham radio license. So I asked my family, my wives, and my son, and I asked her a question. I said, so how does my voice or my cell phone, if I call on my cell phone and I talk to somebody in Germany, how does that happen? Who here can explain the physical actuality of how that signal travels from my cell phone to Germany? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I'm just gonna tell what I remember. When I was a kid, they put a cable under the ocean to Europe, and that's how we could talk.
Okay, is
But I
that
don't
still
know
used
that.
today?
No.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
yes? Okay.
Yes, it is. In the
It is.
Pentagon, there are 2 undersea cables that go from our communication to Moscow.
There's hundreds of cables, a network under the ocean, and that is still used today. Cell phone companies own some of those cable, fiber optics and things like that, the cables that go to all these different countries. So that's still used today. But my family and my friends that I've asked, they have no idea. You just get on, you send an email or whatever, and it gets over there. It goes across the ocean. Now, sometimes they'll use satellite to do it if they have that capability, but they still use those cables across the ocean. Interesting fact. Okay, so somebody says, what was that you said, get lost? That's me. So if we have all this technology, why in the world do we need two-way radios? If we have cell phones, all this, why do we need two-way radios?
Cell phones only get to a tower.
Okay?
The cell phone network is complicated, right? There's towers, the towers connect to other back-end stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff involved in making that phone call journey.
That's right. There's a lot of towers and a lot of involvement going using the cell phone towers. I'm repeating.
Please repeat their questions so
Right.
it can be heard.
That's what I just did.
Oh,
So it's complicated. And in cell towers, what happens in an emergency?
They go down.
They go down.
They get overloaded.
Overloaded. So why do we need two-way radios? So what I'm going to talk about is the beginner type of radio, good old-fashioned walkie-talkie, whatever, Walmart or whatever FRS radio, but this is interesting. How many of you think that GMRS and FRS are the same radio, use the same radio? They use the same radio. In the back?
I think they do, like, does it,
Right.
both these do both?
So
Maybe I
FRS radio,
misunderstand.
Family Radio Service, and GMRS, General Mobile Radio Service, they are the exact same radio. You held up a ham radio back there. So this is just a Walmart radio, channels 1 through 22. GMR is the FRS radio. GMRS radio is also channel 1 through 22. So, okay, quit. So what's the difference in FRS and GMRS?
The power level.
Total,
Corey, what does FRS stand for again?
Family Radio Service. It's also on the handout as well. So Family Radio Service, and then GMRS is General Mobile Radio Service. So the only difference is the power levels. And so FRS radios, channel 1 through 22, they use a lower power wattage. And
We're gonna have to pretend we're at our ward. You're gonna have to shake that every so often, apparently.
is that what we have to do? Okay, so anyway, so they use a lower power wattage, and they go, how far do they go? They say they go, what, 5 miles? They go about a half a mile, FRS radios, if you're lucky. And they're good for communicating to each other in the city, recreation, caravanning, whatever. They're good for that kind of thing and communicating. GMRS, however, you can transmit at a higher wattage, and you set that with, in your radio, it has a power setting in here for high and low. And so you can set that as a high rating, and that'll transmit the signal further. Now, GMRS depends on everything to do with the antenna and the power wattage of how far it will go. So GMRS, how far have you been able to go with a GMRS radio with not a repeater? Anybody? How far? So we did a test a couple weeks ago using GMRS, and I was talking with somebody in Spring City, and I got all the way to Manti, and I was still talking to them.
That's what, 18
So they'll go up to around 25 miles depending on the terrain, depending on the antenna, depending on the power rating.
How do you know you weren't using a repeater?
Because I wasn't tuned into the repeater.
Gotcha.
I didn't have the tones and all that set up. So I wasn't not using the repeater, but I got from Spring City all the way to Manti. I was kind of surprised. And, okay, so any questions on GMRS versus FRS?
So one other difference is GMRS, you can have a removable antenna. FRS radios have to be that exact antenna attached to the radio.
Depends on if you use handheld ham radio, right? So the question was, for FRS, you have to use the antenna, and you can't remove the antenna. Typically not on a Walmart, maybe you can, but it'll probably break it. So FRS is just the lower end, cheap walkie-talkie. Any other comments?
Yeah, this is a little bit off the subject, but not really. Where does Bluetooth and Wi-Fi fit into the spectrum of communication?
So where does the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth fit into the spectrum of communication? So, for example, if your GMRS radio is Bluetooth capable, then you can put the radio here and talk in something else that's wireless to your Bluetooth radio, and then communicate that without having to press buttons or anything. You can do that with Bluetooth, and that's just connecting this via wireless to whatever you want to speak in.
So it's just very short range
Yeah,
radio.
typically it's a really short range. It's better than plugging in a button to press or talk or whatever, if you're out biking or snowmobiling or something. There's also a Bluetooth, button you can press that's tuned to the radio, so you don't use, have your radio here and press the button and talk wirelessly through here to the radio. Good question. Any other questions? So GMRS, it's handy when you're out in the trails or whatever to communicate with one another. However, GMRS, you need a license. So FRS, you do not need a license, but GMRS, you do need a license. And you register, you can go to the FCC amateur radio site on the webpage, and it'll link you there. Just look up GMRS licensing, and it'll take you to a site that you can fill out your information, and you pay your $35 for the license, for a family license up to 10 people. And it lasts for 10 years, your license that they send you.
Why do you need a license?
Good question. So why do you need a license? Well, why does the government need money? It's controlled by the FCC. It's a help to control, I think, the number of people that are actually using it. And they make it a little bit tougher to, not everybody gets a license to use it. And it goes a little bit further, for transmission. And so interference and things like that. Another question?
FRS is kind of like the CV for the new millennium, the new generation, because the old CV could skip and you could hear stuff from clear across the country, little bits here and there, and there's only 40 channels, so it's very busy and very staticky because it's designed to skip off the atmosphere. But the FRS is now so low power and close up, so you could use it within a camp, and then the campsites that are around the other side of the hill or the mountain can use theirs on the same frequency without bothering each other too much. But GMRS, because it has a higher power, and you can actually get repeaters. There's a bunch of people that have built repeaters, and they can put up a repeater for it, which makes it so you can really transmit quite a bit. And that there needs to be some type of control over that, otherwise it'd be kind of chaotic. And so, because of that greater range and a bit greater chance of interfering with other channels or other repeaters, they like to have a little bit of control over that.
Yep. Good answer. Good.
So is the GMRS, is that ham radio?
No,
That's a whole different deal.
it's a whole different deal.
And on the handout is how to get your license, right? I mean, where to go.
Right. So FRS and GMRS are not ham radios, but they operate at a frequency, and the maximum distance, around is 25 miles-ish.
From mountain peak to mountain peak, but if you're in a city around a bunch of buildings, you may not go
Right,
very far.
depends on the interference, the antenna, the power usage and stuff, so GMRS is good for local communication. Okay, so what happens then? So the next stage up, next type of radio is ham radio. And this is a ham radio handheld. So before I tell you about this, I'm gonna share with you a story about getting lost and or stuck. And even as recent as Monday, I ran into a couple that was out in the middle of nowhere, 25 miles from civilization. And they were out there on an ATV, a couple by themselves, stranded. If we had not happened upon them, they'd have been hiking out 25 miles. This was as recent as Monday. And when my wife was 6 months pregnant, and we were out snowmobiling in Fairview, and I liked to go in the powder and go off and stuff, and she liked to stay on the trails or roads or packed roads, and I was getting bored on the roads, and we were 10 miles from our vehicle, And I veered off and I went in the powder and I found this nice little trail that went down and the trail went down and then it kind of petered out and just, it didn't go anywhere. And I don't know if you've been snowmobiling before, but if you're snowmobiling in deep powder and you're going downhill, you don't stop. If you stop, you get stuck. And so I was able to barely turn it around and barely make it back out of there, following my tracks back up on the hill, and my wife passed me coming back down, following me. And I waited and waited and waited, and I knew she was stuck. So I turned around and went back down, and sure enough, she was stuck at the very bottom, the worst possible place. And every time she tried to help me get it unstuck, she started having contractions. And this was like 11 o'clock in the morning, and we were supposed to be home by 2 o'clock because my oldest son, who was 14 at the time, was babysitting. And anyway, for the next 6 hours, I tried to get both snowmobiles unstuck. And I couldn't even walk, I couldn't lift anymore, I was so exhausted. And I turned and looked at my wife and I said, we're in it for the night, there's no way out of here. So we passed a cabin that was about a mile.
Why you want to support the search and rescue?
Getting to that. So, there was a cabin that we passed about a mile up the hill, and so I said we grabbed our lunch, and we could have built a snow cave and stayed there and risked it out, but we decided to hike with every energy that I had left, back up waist deep snow, a mile to the top of the hill, and I picked the least expensive window to break in this cabin, but we survived. Now, I never felt so bad in my whole entire life than, first of all, invading somebody's privacy and getting inside. By that time it was dark. I muddled around, tried to find flashlights and stuff. I was able to start a fire in their fireplace and warm or dry out of our clothes. And about, let me tell you, that is the sickest feeling I have felt, because I'm 10 miles away from our truck, no way to communicate, no way to tell my son where we are, that we're okay, we're alive, but nobody knew anything about it other than we went to Fairview. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I saw lights clear off in the distance. So I knew some action was taking place. And so I pulled the mirror off the wall of the loft, and I shined the flashlight on the mirror, and it was signaling them SOS, whether they understood Morse code or not. But after about 10 minutes, there was one light that veered off from the rest of the lights, that would veer off, and then it would dip down in the gullies and come up and veer down, and you could see it getting closer and closer and closer as it got to us. And then I heard it. It drove right up to the cabin. Are you Corey and Janae Krebs? Thank heavens for search and rescue. They saved our lives that night. I still didn't know how I was gonna get out 10 miles. And so they had the ambulance up on top in the parking lot. My neighbors, friends, people that we knew were all down here waiting, hoping, and fearing the worst. But let me tell you, when that happened, that was the most joyous feeling I have felt in my entire life. And so thanks for search and rescue. So on another sad note for search and rescue, my oldest son that was babysitting, about 4 or 5 years after that, he was killed in an avalanche at Fairview, him and a friend. So this time it was a search and recovery. So again, thanks for search and rescue, risking their lives to help others. So I always get in trouble when I'm out. So, but what that did is it prompted me to never leave without a ham radio. So it prompted me to, I'm never going to leave again without a ham radio, and cell phones didn't exist at that time. So I couldn't have called anybody. And so I was in an area where I don't think I can still make calls from that area. So I have to go to the ham radio or other devices that we'll talk about. But one other time, well, I'll save that story for later when I get into that. So had I had this ham radio, I would have been able to communicate out and get help. At least tell people that I'm okay. And then the next morning they could have come and picked us up normally without calling a whole search team after us. So ham radios, handheld, you do need a license for this. It's a technician's class license is the lowest level of a ham radio license. And so this radio will communicate using repeaters that are located all throughout Utah. And if I get on like for example, the Barton repeater up on the mountain, or Levan repeater, it goes statewide. It'll go to the border of Idaho and Nevada and around the areas.
Could you just give us a quick definition of repeater?
Yep, I was gonna do that, thank you. Definition of a repeater. So repeaters are located at the tops of different mountains or in the valleys or wherever they are. They're everywhere around the state, they're in every state. And so there's a long list of repeaters. You can go to the webpage and print out Utah repeaters, and there's hundreds of them, and frequencies. And so what a repeater does is when you program your radio into that repeater, it will recognize the signal from this radio and transmit that out at a higher wattage, for example, to other repeaters. And some repeaters are linked to another repeater. And so it just keeps transmitting your signal throughout the whole state. So you had a question?
Is it just is a repeater like an antenna, or is it a dish, or?
So it's an antenna that's usually, it's powered by, it's got a battery backup system. So they require, so solar usually charges the battery, and it's usually located on a high mountain point. And so it's always on, it's always running. And it just transmits a signal. It's a receiver and a transmitter.
Would an EMP affect those?
An EMP will probably affect a lot of things. So
Yeah.
an EMP is gonna wipe out unless it's protected somehow, and these things are probably not protected.
So then radio communication would be nil then?
Yeah, radio communications probably wouldn't work anywhere. An EMP has probably hit it and knocked it out.
I don't know if you're aware, but Starlink is doing a beta test to your cell phone.
I'll talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. So,
But when she talked about EMP, if this isn't protected, it could fry this. But if it was protected inside a Faraday cage or Faraday bag, you can protect your own specific radio, and if other people are doing that, then you could at least do radio to radio, even if the repeaters are down.
Okay.
But are you gonna talk about HF?
yes.
Okay, HF might work if radio to radio, because it has a longer range.
We'll get there. Okay, so, all right, so back to ham radios and repeaters. So this ham radio will transmit all the way throughout the state of Utah, because I can transmit to the repeater, and the repeater will transmit my signal. So if you want to get in touch with others and loved ones or other people that you want to get in touch with, they have to have a license and a ham radio to be able to communicate. That's the downside. But the upside is, if you are somewhere in the middle of nowhere and you have an emergency happening, you can use a ham radio, and it most likely will connect with a repeater somewhere. So, when I had a scout troop up in the middle of Uintas, miles and miles out in the middle of nowhere, I used this ham radio, and I contacted a repeater that has auto patch. So what that means is I can contact the repeater, type in a sequence of codes, and I can use this like a telephone. And so it actually transmitted clear over to Vernal and to the repeater, dialed my phone number, and it called my wife in Mapleton. And I was talking to her out in the middle of nowhere from the,
And she was on her cell phone, right?
she was on her phone, cell phone didn't exist then. But she was on her phone, I called the home number, and she answered the phone, I was talking, having a communication, letting her know everything was okay, and it was pretty cool.
Now, mind you, anyone listening into that frequency would hear your conversation, so be careful what
Yeah,
you say.
it's open, everybody that has that radio can hear. And, but again, this is a use of ham radios. And, so this is a way to go, you can transmit further. And like I said, every state has their own frequencies and set of frequency repeaters everywhere. So if you're traveling across country, you can find out what repeaters are in that zone or area and just program the radio into those repeaters and be able to transmit anywhere you're going. So it's a good, useful radio. Okay, any questions with handhelds?
Just a real quick comment, when I took a class 20-something years ago when we first got our license, we were up in the valley, and the instructor keyed up and talked to his friend in Henderson, Nevada.
Yeah.
He said, hey, so-and-so, could you link up this? And he hears doo-doo-doo. And then he keyed it up and said, hey, we're having a ham class, wanted to show the benefits of ham. And anyone down there want to talk to us? Some guy from San Diego popped on and was talking to us from inside a building on low power. And then another guy came in from San Francisco, went all the way down the I-15 corridor, and then went all the way up the coast, all on the low watt handheld while the computer was still working. It's amazing.
Yeah, ham radios, it's amazing what they can do. Okay, so ham radios require a license. Technician class is the lowest class. And on the handout, it shows you, it explains where to go if you want to get a ham radio's license. They have it now available online. You can take the test online, but you have to have a camera, you have to have somebody, a person that's actually hosting the test, and they're actually seeing you take the test as opposed to having somebody next to you giving all the answers. And so, so there is a way to do it, or you can go to a ham radio class and a live class and take the test there. Online, they have practice tests you can take and go through. So a couple of questions that are on the test, for example, is, so what's it like? Question number 1, for example, which is equal to 500 milliwatts? Is it A, 0.02 watts, B, 0.5 watts, C, 5 watts, D, 50 watts? So what's equal to 500 milliwatts?
0.5.
Huh?
0.5.
Yeah, so 0.5 is the answer. Another question would be, why should a 5 amp fuse never be replaced with a 20 amp fuse? A, the larger fuse would be likely to blow because it's rated for higher current. B, the power supply ripple would greatly increase. C, excessive current could cause a fire. D, all of the choices are correct. What do you think?
Has to be D.
Huh?
Has to be D.
D?
C.
E.
What is it?
It's C. It could cause a fire. Yeah,
It won't
so
blow.
wording. And anyway, so it asks you a lot of questions about circuitry, for example. What's a transistor in a circuit? It tells you what it, you have to explain what it is. for example, or choose what it is and what's it do. Dr. Coyle, for example, so this if you don't understand electronics, you might struggle with it. But again, there's a lot of people that just practice the test and pass the test. So you might ask the question, why does it require a test to be a ham radio operator? Again, I think the reason is because not everybody's going to do it. And so it keeps it under a controlled environment. Because now you're transmitting all over the place, and there's a certain protocol that you use. Your call sign, and you don't just chat like kids on the radio. There's a certain protocol that you have to follow. So before we go on to the next topic, any other questions about the handheld? Okay. So this device is a SOS messenger and communicator. It's called Spot, and it costs about, what did I put in there, about $200 or $125 or something like that.
$285.
No, that's a different one.
130.
130, yeah, so 130. So what this does is it will transmit one way. So if I'm out in the middle of nowhere, I can lift this up and press an SOS button, and it'll have helicopters and the Army and everybody else showing that. No, search and rescue. Have you ever got called on from one of these?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll send an SOS message to search and rescue, and then they'll act on it. So you don't play around with this thing.
Can your cell phone do the same thing?
I'll get into that. Well, she asked if the cell phone, you can do that. So technology is always changing. And so this is a one-way communicator. So if I'm out somewhere, it'll send predetermined messages, like, I'm okay, be home soon, whatever. So pre-programmed messages. You log on your computer and type in what messages you want this device to send, and it'll send that message. It will also send a GPS signal, a pinpoint of where you are at certain intervals. So if you're out there somewhere, it'll send that to whoever you programmed it to send it to keep them informed that you're okay. So this is just an entry-level type of a GPS. The next one, I don't have, it's in between that one and this one. It's an InReach. The Garmin InReach Mini, it's a Mini 2. It's a handheld, but it doesn't have a huge screen like this one, but it's a two-way communication. It'll track you. You can also get search and rescue if you need it. It'll track you. If you get lost, it'll backtrack to wherever you were and get you back on trail again. And so it's a two-way communication. You can type in a message and it'll come back to you, or it'll go to that person and that person can send you a message, and you can communicate that way. And this is anywhere in the world. Just be out there with a satellite and it'll communicate. So this one is about $15 a month subscription to make it work. And the one, the InReach I'm talking about, it's about $12 a month from Garmin. And it's so many texts and so many characters and stuff like that. But the basic price is about $12 a month. And that's $285 for that one. This one is the next step up from that one. So this is about $500. And this one is it'll track you. You can see the maps, the topography, it'll leave breadcrumbs. You can go back to where if you were lost. and communicate back and forth with text or emails to any number. You type in a number, it will send it to any number as long as I have their number.
What's it called?
Garmin, it's a GPS CS66I, I think, let's see.
Is that an upgraded version of the Rhino they have that still maps as well?
I think it's about the same. I'm not familiar with Rhinos, but there's all kinds of different devices out there. So this is a GPS 66I. And so this one, I can communicate, and I actually used this week when I was out there stranded with not stranded, but those guys were stranded. I was typing messages back to my son and said, okay, do you know where the fuel pump is on a Polaris 1000? Because I couldn't find it, and it wasn't starting, and so we were trying to get it fixed. And so he was texting me back, and he was telling me where the fuel pump was located. And anyway, we got it started, and we saved them. So another thing is, I was out in the middle of nowhere snowmobiling, 30 miles away from the vehicle, and I was with another friend, and I'm not too confident myself with, I can get lost really easy. I don't have any sense of direction. And we were there at the first of the day, and we were the only set of tracks, and we were making tracks and going 30 miles away from the truck. And we're having a great time, and coming back, guess what? There were a lot more tracks.
Oh, no.
And they were everywhere. I could not tell where and how to get back. And I was still probably 5 miles from the vehicle. And again, I brought this out, and I go, okay, let me see where we were. Oh shoot, the battery's only got one little mark on there. It's like, man, I hope this lasts until I can figure out where I'm going. So I'd go this direction to follow in that direction, and the way to get out of that area I was in was between two trees 4 feet wide to get out, and that was the path to get out, to find the trail to get out again. But had I not done that, I was thinking it was some other direction. I would never have known. But again,
Is that a satellite phone?
yeah, so this is not a voice phone, but it's a communicator, so I can text and email and communicate that way. Or I flip this little button open and press that'll call him to come and get me.
You say that is a satellite phone?
It's not a phone, voice
I
phone,
mean, but it's a
but
satellite.
it's a satellite communicator, just like this one is as well. This is a satellite. And the other one I talked about was also satellite. And so, and this is a satellite, but it has more features and functions. It'll tell you the altitude, it'll tell you the weather, all kinds of things in your area. And so it's just more features with this one. And my sons borrow this all the time when they go out in the wilderness. They borrow it, and I can track them. Like, it'll send me an interval of wherever they are, maybe every 10 minutes or whatever I program at the end there. They can send me, and it'll send me a pinpoint exactly where they are, and I can follow their progress. I took this to the Philippines 2 years ago, and send messages from out in the middle of nowhere. So it's a pretty cool device. You can always stay communicated with somebody. Now, if we had a disaster, would this work?
Maybe not.
What, how do you power it up?
Just turn it on. Just turn it on.
How
There's
do you
no
charge it?
powering up?
How do I charge it?
Yeah,
So I charge it with a charger.
all right, electricity.
Electricity. So the battery lasts for a long time on this. He had it all week, and it lasted all week with communicating back and forth. But so it's well, I can't find a satellite here, but it's a map. It'll pinpoint exactly where I'm at, and I can go wherever, and it'll follow me. Tell me how many feet I've walked or hiked or how far I went, and then I can backtrack, or if I wanna save the trail, I can save it. So if I wanna go back to that spot again, I can just follow along and it'll take me to that same spot again. And, so it's a pretty cool device. So in case of disasters, I think the chances are pretty good that satellites will work, because they're not right in the middle of the disaster. I think the only thing that's gonna hamper a satellite communications is like an EMP that destroys everything, and then we're all messed up. So satellite communication is probably the best way to communicate in case of an emergency. You can always communicate to somebody. And so the monthly subscription for this is like $12 a month. And this, like I said, was $500. And, this is priceless. All you have to do is get lost once, and you're a believer.
How far can you call?
Anywhere in the world. Like, if you don't call, but you send a text message. Like if I'm over in the Philippines, I can text message and it'll go to whoever I send it to. So I can be anywhere in the world, across the ocean, anywhere. And, I can communicate to whoever I wanna communicate to. But it's text messaging. I can type in the message. It's a little slow, but I can type the message. Okay, so any questions about this device?
You can summarize at the end and kind of say, okay, if, this would serve you in this scenario, this would serve you in this scenario,
Okay.
Unity, is that part of
Yeah,
it? Okay.
I'll summarize at the end.
Okay.
Is it, spot device to spot device, or is it spot device to their cell phone? That text?
So this one, so is this spot device to another device like this, or, so what this does, it's, if I have this, I can communicate to anybody in this room
So
to
does
their
that
cell phone.
communicate with a cell phone?
Yeah, it communicates to a cell phone, or I can send an email to anybody in the world. All I have to do is go here and go, okay, send message, how do you wanna send it? And type in their phone number, we got them programmed in here, just press the phone number, I can send it to multiple people. If I wanna send it to 10 people, I just punch and select 10 people, and here's the message, send, and about 2 or 3 minutes later, you can show it, it'll show it uploading, and the message sent. And then I wait about another 2 or 3 minutes, and if they respond, I'll get the message back.
Can they send you a message like, Sally fell and broke her leg and you need to come home and?
That is a very good question. I don't think they can unless I've sent the message first.
You have to initiate it.
I have
and
to
then they-
initiate it, and then they can respond to it.
Okay.
So I have to initiate it, so they can't contact me.
So it's good to have a routine in advance with people you know,
Right.
I'm gonna be calling at this time every night and checking in.
And that's why you send it to multiple people and say, here I am, or whatever, and then they can reply. But I'm pretty sure about that. I don't think anybody can just send a message to this, cause it's not on, and I don't know how to get the message.
Well, I'm just wondering if it's like a text, if somebody's phone died, but you sent a text message, as soon as they powered up, then all of a sudden they get a bunch of text.
I'll have to find that out just to be sure. I'm not 100%, but I'm fairly confident. Any other questions?
Corey, if you was to send a message to someone on that, and then 2 hours later, would they be able to send you a message?
Yes. As long as you have that original communication and send a message, like my son, he had this and he was gone all day, and I was asking him, so I sent a message later on, or he actually sent me an email, so I responded with an email and said, are you still doing okay? And he replied back, yeah, still doing okay. And it sent back the pinpoint and the map, come up on my email and the map and his location, and it tracked all that stuff. So it was pretty cool. All right, so the next step up from this is a satellite phone. Now, as I looked into satellite phones, oh my goodness. So first of all, there's new technologies all the time. So it used to be that iPhone 14 or newer was the only one that you could connect to with a satellite. So now, when I look today, they have all kinds of phones that will connect to the satellite if the carrier supports it. I don't know what I did with that. Let's see.
A lot of times, there was a side-by-side, they hit a rock, they tipped over, it sent out an automatic message to family, they contact search rescue, we go up, and by this time, they got it righted, and all of a sudden cavalry comes in, like, no, we're fine, we're good, you know? And so, it's sometimes it's automatic, kinda like a crash alert on one of those GMC on Star kind of a thing.
So I can see this is where this is headed with satellite. I mean, when I get into Starlink and stuff like that. But right now, Apple iPhone 14 or later, Google Pixel 9 or later, including the Pro Fold and Pro XL, Motorola 2024, including the Razr Plus and Edge and G Series, Samsung A14 and above, Samsung S21 or later, the Samsung Galaxy, and the Galaxy S21. Anyway, there's a list, you can go there and they're always adding to this list. So how that works is, your carrier has to have that support for that satellite, to Starlink, for example, or to T-Mobile Starlink or whatever they call it. And, so your phone will, right now, it's free to use that service. They're doing a beta right now. I think it might end in April, but no word on that I know of. But it's a beta where you can, if you have one of those newer phones, you can actually text a message and call via satellite out in the middle of nowhere. And after the beta is over, of course, it's probably gonna be a little additional charge for that. But that's through your carrier. And so that's pretty cool. You can send an SOS message and texting, and some of them will allow you to call with a voice.
Will it also give your GPS pin location?
I think so. I think it does that as well, pin location as well.
Yeah, we were caught in a blizzard up in New Windows and, could have frozen to death. We got into a cabin, but a friend was just messing with his phone. He didn't even know what he had pushed, but it sent the emergency to the satellite. The search and rescue could see exactly where we were, so they were able to find us the next day.
Another good reason why to support the search.
Okay, good, that's awesome.
Donate.
Amazing.
And we all get in those situations, every one of us somehow, and if you haven't, be prepared. So anyway, so the phone service, if you can imagine, no more towers eventually, and it's all done through satellite, it's like a tower in the sky, a cell tower in the sky.
Have you done this on your phone?
I have not, I don't have a later.
Last
version.
year I was hunting in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming and didn't have cell coverage, obviously. And at some point your phone just kind of gives you this little pop-up banner. It gives you an icon of a satellite picture, and it also says SOS, but
Right.
the point is you have to, do this thing,
Right.
and you actually point your phone and it will tell you which way to turn. And then your phone will connect to the satellite.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you have a good signal, your phone will tell you. I don't know that it gave me the option to make a phone call, but we texted, a fair amount, so she knew where.
Yeah, that's what it says on the
So,
internet. It
yeah.
tells you that
So, but it's
some of them
actually
have
pretty, I didn't even know it was an option.
That's awesome.
I'm looking at my phone, I'm like, let's try this. And it's kind of self-explanatory.
Right.
You don't have to go into the functions of the phone. If you don't have a signal after a certain amount of time, I think it will prompt you and say, hey, do you want to send a message via satellite? And then you just have to find it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna repeat all that, but it was all good. So he was out there hunting and he was able to get on his phone, and it came on his phone that if you wanted to use satellite to communicate. And so he has that service and the right cell phone to do that. So I think that's where technology is going. There's so many different options with, when it gets into satellite, technology. So there's the phones with the carriers, and then there's the next option would be a satellite phone, where you can actually make a call from anywhere in the world. And it's a phone where you make a call and call somebody. And there's unlimited number of ways you can do that, all kinds of different ways. There's packages out there where you can buy 2 phones, for example, for a family plan, and you pay $100 a month or $170 a month for 100 minutes. And then that's good for 1 year, for example, or you pay monthly fee, and it's good for like 300 minutes a month, but it's pricey. But what's it worth to be rescued?
Is that a Starlink that you're talking about?
No, that's just a satellite phone.
That's an older satellite phone system before a lot of the new Starlink and a lot of the new stuff
Right.
is coming online. But I went to a preparedness fair, as I go to all of them. But I saw a guy at a booth, and he had a bunch of radios, and he actually had sat phones. And he says because some of the newer technologies are using a different satellite system and maybe more available through phones like the iPhone. But he said that some of the prices are coming down on some of those older satellite systems because they know there's gonna be a lot of competition. And I thought he quoted me like $15 a month, kind of a thing. And the radios weren't that much, and he was just saying you could actually buy a bunch and then rent them out on the weekend for somebody that's going on a rent our sat phone for the weekend if you're gonna go out in the bush, and then you can still have a backup
The
cost.
sky's the limit right now with different things
Literally.
going on, literally. And so there's the satellite phone. But like you said, it links with its own satellite up there. It doesn't link with Starlink, but it has its own satellite and all that stuff, and the prices are coming down, but they're all over the place.
The problem with phones is, how many of you have ever had your phone die on you?
Uh-huh.
Okay, Murphy's Law states that it will die on you right when you need it to survive. So I don't leave without, I actually bought a case, that's just a case for my phone, but it's also a backup battery. And it charges my phone, it even has a little USB port that I can charge another device or another phone in an emergency. So if my friend's phone, here, let me hook it up long enough for you to call home and say, hey, I'm alive. And then you could let the next phone person do that, just long enough for them to call home. But I would never leave home without an extra, I even have another battery, it's a 10,000 milliamp battery that could charge like 5 devices at once, including my phone. And it even has prongs where you can plug it into an AC source if one showed up. So we call it the PACE plan in the military, you familiar with that? You have a primary plan, you have an alternate plan, you have a contingency plan, and you have your emergency plan. So you have layers of backups. So don't think, well, I've got a phone. And then you're using the flashlight on your phone because you don't have a dedicated flashlight and you run your battery down. Or you have Candy Crush on there instead of all the frequencies with all the, the repeaters, so you could, and so your battery goes dead and then it's dead. You can't play any games that distract you. Now you're faced with reality with no phone and no communication. So if you're gonna have a phone, have an extra battery or buy a case with a built-in battery and have that backup.
Okay, we probably ought to be wrapping up here soon, so let's talk about Starlink for a minute. So Starlink is, so right now, you can buy Starlink for about $120 a month if it's a fixed location. And if it's a roaming location, like on your motorhome or some other place you wanna take it set up, so you need a dish and you need a receiver, and to be able to communicate with Starlink. And it's about $165 a month for the roaming. And you can turn it on and off whenever you need it. If you wanna pause it for a month, pause it for half a year, you can pause it and then just start it up again whenever you want. But it's $165 a month. And that's just another way to communicate, and that way you'll always have communications. Use your cell phone to communicate with the Starlink or send emails. It's just like having a web page at your disposal or communicate your phone. You can use it anywhere, but you have to have the dish with you to be able to communicate to the Starlink. Jake?
Okay, so I think it was Elon Musk helped people in the Carolinas with this. What was that all about?
So in a disaster, people tried to use their cell phones, and guess what happened? Couldn't get out, all busy. So Elon Musk sent a lot of devices in that area for people to log into the satellite and the dishes, so they could log into the Starlink and communicate. And so during a disaster, that would be the way to communicate, is via satellite, because it's up there, and all you have to have is the devices down here to be able to communicate with it. And so in a disaster, using satellite and help, it's always a good way to go, but it's expensive. It's just like having your own computer system available to you wherever you are, your phone system.
The Ukrainian military like
Yeah. Yeah. Any question? Okay.
Talk about HF, no?
No, yeah, so if the satellite goes down, EMP's hit, what do you do now? So, there's one radio left if it's protected. If you have a protected radio inside your house somewhere, and these radios are base stations for ham radios. They'll communicate anywhere in the world. But yeah, they're the ones that has the large antennas with a few generals and extras in here. They'll communicate. So what's the furthest you've communicated? Do you have base station radios?
If repeaters are working, you can go all around the world.
Well, what if it's not a repeater? What if it's just your ham radio?
At your base station?
From your power.
Rick?
So, as a technician, you're allowed part of the 10-meter band, which, I have a friend that was there, and he communicated with Japan and Wisconsin, just as a technician.
Okay, so did you hear that? So with a 10-meter band, you can communicate basically all over the world with a 10-meter.
Well, you're allowed to, but it depends on your antenna.
Right.
And the wattage of your radio.
Yeah, exactly. Wattage and antenna and power. That's what it does.
Besides that, it is very dependent on the weather, the time of year,
It is.
the sunspot cycle.
It is, and the skip of the signal across the earth, and also you can communicate, but who are you communicating to? Who has a ham radio base station around? How many? You have to know somebody. So if you can communicate to somebody. Yeah, Japan's doing well. You know what? So what? So now what?
Plus you have to be able to speak their language and vice versa.
Well, good thing English is universal. So it's a requirement, I think, in ham radio. You have to. Is that right? English? Is that?
At least for call centers and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you can always communicate with someone who, like if my daughter's down in Arizona, and she has a friend up the street who's a ham. So you have to know what frequency he operates on, and she's given me those frequencies that he usually operates on at what time of day. So I can communicate with him, and then he can call her up.
Yep.
She can go down, whatever.
Yeah, that's how it works with base stations. So if you know somebody that has a ham radio base station, big antennas, then you would have to know what frequency they're transmitting on and the time of day with all the different time zones, and transmit at the exact same time. And if the sun, the moon, the stars are all aligned right with the right skips, you'll be able to contact them, right? Okay.
So the repeater is not affected by an EMP?
It can.
It can be. Yeah, it can be.
EMPs can be local or they can be
Yeah.
large scale.
So the base station ham radios, they don't use repeaters, right? Typically, they're just transmitting power and the signal. So it's the smaller handheld ham radios that use repeaters to transmit the signal. And typically, it's just statewide, controlled by each state and FCC. Okay, how many of you have heard of rapid radios? How many of you have rapid radios?
Rapid?
Rapid radios. It's a scam. It is, I just wanted to tell you there, don't, I wouldn't recommend it
Oh, yeah.
because they don't tell you everything. They say you can communicate anywhere in the United States or whatever from thousands of miles. Well, it requires a cell tower. And what's gonna happen during a disaster?
Down.
What happens if you're out in the middle of nowhere where you don't have cell service? I mean, anyway, it's false advertisement. And, also, they don't tell you, well, first of all, they tell you no monthly subscription ever. But they do have an annual subscription. $50 a radio. And if you buy 6 radios at a time, for example, for your family, you're communicating only with those 6 radios because the SIM cards are all linked together. And so there's a lot of stuff they don't tell you that just bugs me that they are advertising everywhere. And anyway, it's false advertising.
Like those old Nextel.
Yeah,
walkie-talkie.
yeah, that's what they used to be. Okay, so let's get into, just for quickly, the CERT. So during a disaster, so just imagine we have a disaster, no cell phones are working, and 911, everybody's calling 911. They're gonna get overwhelmed, for example, and it may not even work, and cell phones are not working, so how do you communicate within a city? So you communicate with your handhelds, GMRS. This is where it comes in handy to communicate with one another. Now, what we want to do in Spring City is we want to organize our block captains and each block captain to become CERT certified. So that in the CERT training, you are trained on knowing how to look at disasters and situations, buildings, collapses. You're learning medical. You're learning how to communicate. You go to a command center, and the first one at a command center, for example, is the first one to start making decisions of where to send people. As people are starting to arrive at a command center, then you start delegating and start sending them out by pairs to different places. And this last page right here, one of these last pages, is what you would use at a command center, for example, and communicate. So you communicate using these radios with your people that are going out, that you're sending out, and you're communicating to them where's the name, the address, what block they're on, so you got coordinates of where they live. Are they missing? They need help? They got physical needs? They have medical needs? If so, what? And so you're documenting this as a document to be able to hand to search and rescue, for example, because where are they gonna send the ambulance in a disaster?
Everywhere.
You've got 1,000 calls coming in, where are they gonna send the ambulance?
Where they know the most about.
Whoever screams the loudest, whoever,
Or maybe
whatever,
where they can get.
wherever they can get.
They might
And
not
so-
be able to get everywhere.
What CERT can do is be an extension arm of search and rescue. If everyone's trained in medical to a certain point, they can help minimize the deaths, minimize the injuries, and by being an extension. And so by communicating all this stuff with search and rescue and the teams when they arrive, or other people, we can communicate where they are, who's injured the first, here's where you need to go first. And so it's an extension of all this, so we need to work together as a community to do that. And that's why we wanna set it up this way for each block captain to become CERT certified, so they learn all those basic skills and know how to use a command center and know how to triage and what to do in a disaster.
80% of the time people are saved at a disaster, they're saved by the people around them, not official first responders. So if you're gonna help somebody, even that grumpy neighbor, you're probably the first person to jump the fence and go try to save them. So if you're gonna do that, even with the grumpy people, then wouldn't it be good to get the training and know
Yes.
how to do it safely and not become part of the problem too? So it's really good for everybody.
So one last thing I wanna cover is this little, communication process flow. So what happens, the block captain, they report to the emergency response coordinator, who would be Jane, for example, for Spring City, or her backup. And Jane notifies CERT Command Center, or they notify, CERT Command Center, and then church leaders at the same time. So the church leaders get notified, and then the command center. And then from there.
What paper are you looking at?
What's that? It's this little,
What page?
Oh, okay, what is that?
it's right above the chart. And so it goes the command center, notify CERT Command Center, and then church leader, and then CERT Command Center to San Pete Search and Rescue, for example. And that's an ideal situation in that situation. So try your phone first. If they don't work, get on your FRS GMRS radio. And if that doesn't work, then get on your ham radios. And if that doesn't work,
Get on your bike.
get on your bike or your butt and start walking to the houses. And then send runners to back and forth to the command center, reporting back what you found. And so that's kind of the process flow of communicating and working together as a community.
And we think our command center would most likely be this area right here, since the fire station's here.
Well, it depends, there might be multiple, but it may be in a
That's true.
small city that we'll have to figure that out. In larger cities, you want several different command centers probably set up, or a command center or triage center. So not everyone's running to the city building, or not everyone's running to the same location.
So when you say set up, you mean designated so that we'll know where it's gonna be it's gonna be set up forever and permanent and 24/7.
Right, so it's decided ahead of time during the training, okay, where's command center gonna be? And you know, if somebody's injured, you're not gonna get a blanket and hoof it 1.5 miles to the city, right, the city center. You wanna set up a triage center somewhere. And that's communicating back and forth with the command center to the triage place in the locations. Okay, that's all I have for tonight. Any questions from anyone?
Real quick on the HF, there are some smaller ones, radios that are literally only like 8 pounds for this setup. And one guy, he has a YouTube channel, it's called Tech Prepper. And he sets up this little chest rig and some coils of wire for long distance communication. And he's, from his little rig, setting up a little post and an antenna, wires just setting up out in the middle of nowhere. He's been able to talk all around the Intermountain West and even contact people as far as Missouri before, just with this little 8-pound rig that he has with him. So there are some really good lightweight ones that are a little bit more portable that still use HF radio to radio even over great distances. So I'm hoping to get my kids set up with that are in Missouri at some point, and then we can have a designated time that we'll communicate with each other and we can practice those things.
I have a question for Max. If one wanted to donate tonight, can we do that?
Yeah, those forms back there, they have a little scan so you can use a QR code and.
But you can take cash, you
We can
remember
take
what
cash
that
or
is,
check
okay.
too, and make it out, it's written in there, it's not very simple,
So one last thing, you asked to kind of follow up or recap on what we were going to, what these radios were for. So, I mean, for me, cheap, and I mean, for $100, $120 a year, I like this because it has several different purposes and it's cheap. And I can communicate with somebody, and I can call for somebody to come in and rescue me if I had to. That's probably the best and most effective.
That's the 66i?
Yeah. And it's just a way to communicate, the cheapest, and plus it tells me where I'm at. If I get lost, then I can still communicate and get help if I need it.
When did that debut or come out?
I don't know. I've had a couple of versions of this.
So you might wanna look for the latest, because they might come out with just the next one up that has it.
What was
Right.
the numbers on it, the model number?
It's a Garmin's GPS map 66i.
66 on.
Yeah, and so this is just a good way to communicate. Now, technology is advancing, so like your cell phones, for example, if you have a cell phone and you're out in the middle of nowhere, I'm not sure if it works internationally, if you're on T-Mobile, if that works. You might have to put a different SIM card in or whatever, but if it really will work internationally, I'm not sure. But again, you're paying for that service every month, but you already have the phone, so that might be another way to go. The technology is always changing, so that's what I would recommend. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.